Dipping into the Peacock and Williamson mailbag, how important was Super Bowl III? And happy birthday to 80-year-old Joe Namath, by the way. What about quarterback purgatory? Is there a new team entering quarterback purgatory in 2023? And some league proposals, schedule proposals in the mailbag. Coming up on today's Peacock and Williamson.
NFL analyst Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson bring you expert NFL analysis every day in less than 30 minutes. Get an inside look into the NFL on the field and in the front office. With elite breakdowns, next-level analysis, and in-depth information only for the real NFL fans. This is Peacock and Williamson, and it starts now.
Welcome to the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show. Brian Peacock alongside Matt Williamson at BD Peacock at Williamson NFL. Thanks, everybody, for making us your first listen right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Appreciate all you everydayers out there. If you're not an everydayer, make sure you're subscribed up on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcasts. So the questions for today's Twitter Thursday episode, mostly coming from Twitter. We can dip into some comments on the YouTube page as well. I want to start with this one because it is Joe Namath's 80th birthday. We had a question from, who was the question from? The question's from Joey Bag of Donuts, who's a frequent.
Oh yeah, he's
here on
the man.
Shout out to Joey, and he's an everydayer. Would the NFL be where it is today if it wasn't for Joe Namath and Super Bowl III?
I think the answer is no. I mean, again, a little before my time. I turned 50 next week, but that doesn't mean I was on top of Super Bowl III coverage. The way I've always been taught this, as if it's in the history class, is the NFL was a dominant organization, not like it is today, but it was the only show in town. And the Packers were an unbelievable team, pre-Super Bowl and then the first two, and looked like an unbeatable organization. Talking about the NFL, not the Packers. And the Colts apparently were the heir apparent. I mean, this was Don Shula. This was the end of the Unitas era. The Colts were loaded. They're in line to take over for the Packers as the dominant team in coming years of the NFL. And it certainly isn't NFL versus XFL today. I mean, the XFL would never win that game in 1,000 years. The AFL at least got some guys. Joe Namath is like, I don't want to say Bryce Young. I want to say like Joe Burrow. Like when he came out of Bama, he was a superstar prospect, and it would be like the XFL plucked Joe Burrow or Andrew Luck out of the NFL's grasp, and he wasn't the only one. So they were frightening to the NFL. And the Jets were huge underdogs. I think they were like 13-point dogs in that game. I'm in the area, in an era when teams weren't scoring 40 points. It was a lot of running, and 13-point dog is like an insurmountable odds. And plus, they were a New York team, and Namath was on commercials when few athletes were, and wearing pantyhose and wearing fur jackets on the sideline, which is awesome. And, super studly dude in New York and all that. And so it was a high profile organization. It wasn't like an upstart team that nobody didn't have any brand recognition. And they showed they could beat the big bad Colts. So I think it very, very, very much solidified the AFL. And people like Al Davis put a lot of pressure on the NFL then to merge. And I think I probably got about 90% of those facts right for my history lesson.
It was the beginning of made-for-TV NFL. It was like,
that
this
too.
is
That's
the
huge.
biggest
You're
thing every year, and it is amazing, and the Super Bowl is the biggest event.
Right. And again, those weren't events all through the 70s like they are now. But I mean, that they're interviewing Joe Namath on a lounge chair by a poolside, and he said, "I guarantee we're going to win the game." Like there's cameras in your faces, there's mics in your faces. These guys are becoming household names. It's marketable. And oh, by the way, it was a New York team.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's maybe Michael Jordan-like impact, but the NBA through marketing and through famous athletes got a lot more popular in the late 80s and into the 90s. And they had a lot of great athletes, a lot of great players, but it wasn't as, a popular sport as baseball and football. But then it started gaining ground because of, star power. And I think that's what Super Bowl III and Joe Namath also brought to the table in a big market.
Yeah, 100%. And it's interesting you brought up the NBA because I actually just watched Air, which was pretty good, by the way. And the main character is actually a Pittsburgh guy. I didn't know that. Son of a Caro or whatever. But the NBA was strong through the 70s, Bird, Magic, and then it was starting to kind of die a little bit. So they needed a big star. And I don't think Namath was Air Jordan level because he wasn't the best player in the league, but he was high profile in the right market and just solidified the AFL where a large portion of today's current NFL teams came from: Chargers, Raiders, etc. Chiefs.
We have a proposal here, Matt, from
Okay.
Brian on Twitter, and we talked a lot about schedule and how the league could be changing and where they're creeping toward as far as a schedule goes, and if we might see another extra preseason game to get to 18 from 17, or a regular season game. He says, I have a league proposal. The schedule goes to 19 weeks. Week 8 is a bye week for all teams. Trades are from the offseason to week 1. Then again, only in week 8. The NFL can have a televised week 8 trade spectacle, and the players get rest. Teams still get their bye. What say you?
I think it stinks. I appreciate the tweet. I hate to throw it out there. I mean, to restrict trades at any point, I think, isn't what anybody wants to see.
No.
The fact that the whole league is off for an entire week, you know how much revenue on Thursday night, Sunday night, Monday night, all day Sunday, like TV is,
NFL would never go for that. I do like the idea of so I'm on board with 19 weeks. That's 2 buys.
That's my favorite thing.
And you can get teams with buys and don't have the short weeks on Thursday. It helps for player safety.
Right.
But you're not going to skip a week revenue wise and not have games any week during the season. That's definitely not going to happen and shouldn't happen. I wouldn't want that as a fan. But you can definitely have a televised trade spectacle for sure. And so maybe
the players don't need the rest to do it. You can just do it on a Wednesday night.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Right. Yeah.
Exactly.
Right.
So I think Brian got his proposal half right.
Mm-hmm.
The week 8 bye for everybody, I don't think it works, and I don't think it's the right way to rest players and teams either.
Right. Like, would you and I go on vacation and go to the Bahamas that week? I mean, I don't know, but
his idea is a little bit like an all-star break where everyone's off for the day after and the day before the all-star game.
That's a good way of explaining it. I hadn't thought of it in that light, and every other league does that apparently, and everybody then has equal rest, comes back. I kind of understand it. 0% chance that the NFL says cool about it just from the financial aspect. But one thing I did want to touch on, if you brought up, and I brought it up often, I think 2 bye weeks is the fairest thing to the players. And again, then you should never have a super short week on the road on Thursday night. No excuses for those things. Makes overseas stuff easier and space them out throughout the year. But my problem is I've never heard someone smart enough, not that I'm close to being smart enough, to say, how do you make it work? Because you either got to start the year a week earlier or a week later, and it's pretty crammed in as it is.
So it would definitely go deeper into February. We're already into February anyway with the Super Bowl. I don't think that's a problem. So you steal a week there. You can even steal both of the weeks there because you're adding a game and you're adding a bye. So you're adding 2 weeks to the schedule if you do it that way. Mm-hmm. And the preseason stuff. I don't really.
We could cut down on it, can't we?
It's weird because in a way, for sure, cut down on it. 2 preseason games to get your team ready, but then there needs to be a supplemental sort of a preseason game for all the guys that are fighting for the 53-man roster. Like those guys need to play, and they need a game for them. So I don't really want to take away another preseason game from those players on the roster. And I think the league and the teams will figure it out on their own who they want to rest and who they don't for the preseason game. So. The teams can handle that themselves. I don't think that's a problem. But those guys at the bottom of the roster need to have the preseason games to play. And so I wouldn't want to take away a preseason game from those guys.
The only thing I'll fight you on, and I don't disagree with what you said, is because of COVID, practice squads expanded dramatically. And so that does help those bottom of the roster guys. You're going to have more employed guys than you did in the past. And I should know this off the top of my head. I think it's a 13-man practice squad. But what if it's 15 or 16? So what? You pay an extra couple of $grand a week to keep those guys around? And it's not like it's expensive to have a more practice squad.
In a longer season, you're probably going to need more players.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and when in doubt, just keep that 4th safety or 5th safety you weren't sure about, even though you didn't get a lot of games to evaluate them. It's
Interesting.
doable. It's doable.
They're going to get there. And
Yeah.
what's the thing that's happening the week after the Super Bowl in February right now? They're already into February. What's the thing that you're holding back? The offseason can go a little later, right? You can push back free agency another week if that's what you're worried
All those
about.
things we get pushed back.
You can push back the draft another week. I mean, there's, players need their rest too. So that's probably the big thing is like how much time off in the offseason are players going to get in this really physical sport. So, you still a week in February. Maybe you do take away a preseason game. There's already that extra week before the season. Maybe you take that away too, and you just go right into the season again from the preseason.
This might shock people. I mean, Pittsburgh guy, AFC North, tough guy football, play out in the weather, but I don't love the chance of an ice bowl in Green Bay for the NFC Championship. You know what I mean? Like if weather interferes with Pat Mahomes' ability to throw the football because he's in Buffalo and there's 8 feet of snow, the best team doesn't usually go to the Super Bowl then. You know what I mean? Like, I just think there's a better chance that the most important games get impacted by weather, which I don't like.
Yeah, and there's going to be those games because you can't take December and January off the schedule.
Right.
I get what you're saying there too. The Super Bowl and they don't put the Super Bowl in ice bowl conditions for a reason.
But the championship games,
yeah,
right. And I guess you could move it to a dome somewhere if a blizzard's coming, but that takes away something too.
Okay, Matt, next we got a question about we've talked about how we're on record saying that the Arizona Cardinals front runner to get the top pick in the NFL draft. We got a question about who the teams that could get the second pick in the draft are, or someone that could actually get it over the Arizona Cardinals in the 2024 NFL draft, and it could be a very valuable pick. Question about quarterbacks. Aaron Rodgers, which way is he going to go? He's going to go the Russell Wilson direction or the Tom Brady and Tampa direction on his new team? And what about Tampa? Are they the new quarterback purgatory team in the NFL? A ton more questions here on today's Peacock and Williamson mailbag. This episode of P&W is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Make a fast break to FanDuel during the NBA playoffs because right now, new customers can get a no-sweat first bet up to $2,500. That's $2,500 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. There's no better place to bet all the playoff action than America's #1 sports book. The NBA Finals getting going here a little bit later today. The Denver Nuggets favored by 9 points at home over the Miami Heat in this one, but it's not just that. I mean, you can bet on Jokic double-double. You can bet on Michael Porter Jr., 15-plus points and Denver to win. Player performance doubles if you want there. You've got first basket, method of first basket, Jimmy Butler props, Jokic props. It's unbelievable the things you can bet on every single game. And I mean, that's just the NBA. You've got NHL playoffs. You've got Major League Baseball. You can still bet on NFL futures for 2023. So get to FanDuel right now and sign up. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and get a no sweat first bet up to $2,500. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. So, Matt, when it comes to the first pick in the NFL draft next year, and I'm actually going to take a look at FanDuel here to see what those odds are. I think the Arizona Cardinals are the leader in the clubhouse to get that first pick in the draft.
Yeah. And I think their Hopkins move kind of tells you they think they might be too.
They're not upset if that happens.
Yeah.
And we'll see what happens when Kyler Murray comes back. And, does he give them a spark and do they win too many games? How many games does Kyler Murray play for them? Because if he's out all year, I mean, who do you even have there that you think is going to carry your team to anything more than, 5 wins? I mean, it's hard to say that they're going to win in that. They're in a pretty bad spot. Michael, in his question here on Twitter, throws out maybe Jimmy Garoppolo being hurt all year and Vegas in their quarterback situation. Is Las Vegas the team? Is it Tennessee potentially that team? Those are the 2 teams he throws out. Who do you think after the Cardinals is the most likely team to draft at the top of the 2024 NFL draft?
I think Houston is low-hanging fruit, and I don't think I would put a chip down. I mean, I think that they take a step forward towards respectability and are okay. Sticking in the AFC, there's not as many candidates, obviously. I really think the Raiders and Titans have a legit shot. And, what if Jimmy doesn't play? I mean, what if he's fine by opening day and still only lasts 3 weeks and the defense is bad? And I don't love the coaching staff. And while I love the Titans coaching staff, I kind of hate their O-line and pass catchers, and the D's just fine, and Tannehill last, and yada, yada. In the NFC, I don't think it's hard to write a story about the Rams just the last 3 months of the season being ugly, 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 ugly. One Stafford elbow tweak, and oh no, that I think that could happen. I'm not sure if the Bears can be that bad. I don't know if anybody in that division can be that bad. And I'm not sure if anybody in the South can be that bad. I think Carolina will probably be the team I pick for fourth in the South. Well, maybe Tampa. Tampa's an interesting one too.
So the Arizona Cardinals, by far, looking at the FanDuel win totals here, which you can bet on and find at FanDuel.com/lockedon. 4.5 wins by far, by 2 wins is the lowest over/under win total for 2023 regular season. That's Arizona Cardinals.
Mm-hmm.
Then you have another number of teams that are tied there. So, even the odds makers can't quite decide who that next team would be. And it is I think we've named all the teams. It's the Houston Texans. It's the Chicago Bears. It is the Los Angeles Rams. It is the Tampa Bay Bucks. It is the Washington Commanders and Las Vegas Raiders at 6.5 wins.
Washington would be the one I would not put a chip on. If we just, you named like 6 teams there. I think I named just about all of them. If you had to put $1 on one of them to get the first overall pick, who would you take? Washington would be my last choice.
I wish I knew a little bit more about Matthew Stafford's arm, because if I knew like how many games he was going to play, then I would put, if he plays all the games, then I probably would not choose them.
Mm-hmm.
But I would probably go Rams next. And then it's tough because they're in the same division. So they beat up on each other? Does that help or hurt both Arizona and Los Angeles chances if LA has a season like they had last year?
If they split, does that hurt their chances? You know what I mean? You're right. Yeah.
Any of the teams that are starting rookie quarterbacks, I think is smart money. I'm bullish on the Chicago Bears, so I would not take them. They would be the last team I take. I think I'm talking myself into the Bears too much, to be honest with you, this year, because there's a lot needs to still happen for them. But I like the Bears this year, so I would probably have a toss up here between Carolina and Houston, okay. Las Vegas, obviously without Jimmy, and look. Yeah. What are the odds if Jimmy comes through this injury? He might get hurt again with a different injury anyway. So
exactly.
I think Las Vegas. I think Michael nailed it in the question here that Las Vegas is probably the team I'd put up there as the second most likely to get the number 1 pick.
Tennessee was not in the runner-up odds, right? That you mentioned.
Ooh, I think they might have been 7.5 wins. Let me double check that. Right now.
Wow! I say I might put some money on Tennessee to have a worse season than Vegas thinks.
Let me go back. You know what? Actually, now that I think about it, I think I got the Rams wrong. They might be 7.5 as well. No, the Rams are 6.5. I think the Rams have gone down. They started at 7.5. I think they've dropped to 6.5.
I remember seeing them at 7.5. I'm like, wow, I should put money on that. I mean, that's I can't imagine them winning 8 games.
Tennessee Titans is 7.5 win total over under.
Oh, I can't imagine them winning 8 games, even though they have an easy division.
By the way, OTA reports that Ryan Tannehill's job is not in jeopardy with the way that Will Levis and Malik Willis look in OTA so far. So,
yes, and nor should it be. And I think Tannehill's a slightly underrated player that's had some not great situations. But I bet Willis, and especially Levis, play this year and are started.
If their season goes that way. And that's the question.
Right.
The Titans are a team that could I don't think we should be shocked if they win that division either.
Oh, I'm the opposite.
Really?
I think I'm going to pick them for 4th.
I don't think I would have the Titans in the same group as those other teams. I put the Titans more close to where I have the Bears.
Okay. That's why I brought it up, is maybe I can make a better buck, get a longer odds for them to get first overall pick. Pays off a little better.
But, I mean, it's not close. It's the Cardinals, right? All day long.
All these are a distant second, yes. Yeah.
Speaking of Tampa, though, and I could see a big collapse. We talked about that with which teams could collapse this year in a previous podcast this week. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers could for sure be one of those, and the quarterback position could be part of that. But there might be a little too much talent on that team, Matt, for them to completely collapse. And we have a question here from Zachary. He says, is Tampa bad enough to need a quarterback swap next year? Very likely. but too good to be picking in the top 10. I feel like they are stuck as the front runners of the Goff sweepstakes next year. And Kirk Cousins is going to be a free agent. And it's funny because Kirk Cousins is right now the guy I think of being in that weird quarterback purgatory where you've got a good quarterback and you're too good to win, or you're too good to lose enough games to go get a top quarterback in the draft. So you end up in quarterback purgatory. And I would worry that that's where the Tampa Bay Bucs are heading.
It's interesting because I don't think quarterback purgatory concerning Tampa Bay would involve Baker Mayfield or Kyle Trask, but it could be Kirk Cousins, like you mentioned, in a very Derek Carr-like manner, that this division isn't very good. We can win it. They have a chunk of cap space, draft an offensive tackle at 10 and convince themselves we're the best team in this division with Cousins. Let's give it a shot. I guess that's possible, and that's a little frightening, but it also keeps it quite, relevant in a bad division. They'll
say to themselves in the offseason, well, look, we just need this little bit better quarterback play, and there's this quarterback available. We could win 2 more games, and that might have put us in the wild card spot.
Or are they the team, much like their divisional rivals from this year, that says, how about we send you Chris Godwin and the 9th overall pick and next year's first and something else tender and nice, Arizona, and we'll move to 1 and go get a quarterback or what, something like that. You know what I mean?
Maybe they'll just say, and I think that'll happen for a lot of teams if they're in striking distance and go get up to 1 or 2. If May and if Caleb Williams are those guys at the top of this draft, and we have to go through a whole draft season. Those quarterbacks are going to be in the limelight this year, and there's going to be holes poked in those guys. So we'll see if not, then if you go all in for the top pick in the following draft, then rebuild. I think you're kind of a year late if you're Tampa.
And it's, of course, very subject to change. But if Williams is this special, whoever's at 1's going to take him. Like the Bears would have taken him even if they have Fields. Arizona will take him even if they had Kyler. Exactly. But maybe you get the 3 for May.
Well, maybe you get Kyler.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, there's that move, which could be the best quarterback situation in that division, possibly.
I mean, most dynamic quarterback for sure.
Yeah.
Second part of Zachary's question about Aaron Rodgers and what we expect from Aaron Rodgers, and is everybody crowning the Jets a little bit too soon? And what about Davante Adams versus Justin Jefferson? Who's better right now, today, Matt? We'll finish up our Peacock and Williamson mailbag next. Thanks, everybody, for making Peacock and Williamson your first listen right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. All you everydayers, you know about it, but if you're not an everydayer, make sure you are subscribed up on the brand new Peacock and Williamson YouTube channel. Hit the notification button so you know when a new show arrives and you know when we go live. We promise to do more live episodes this summer. We're going to have a lot of fun this summer and doing some new series too as well, looking at the entire league, getting ready for 2023 that you want to be tuned into every single day. And you can not only find us on YouTube, but everywhere you get your podcasts. Okay, what's more likely? Aaron Rodgers to the Jets being more like Russell Wilson to the Broncos, or the results of Tom Brady going to Tampa Bay? Zachary goes on to say, I feel like there's at least a greater than 0 possibility Rodgers is a bust going to the New York Jets, and feels like nothing but optimism, similar to Wilson's situation last year.
I mean, those are pretty far examples. Brady goes in and wins the Super Bowl,
I do want to say, because that's like Brady won a Super Bowl. So it's hard to say, they're going to go win a Super Bowl with Rodgers. Right. But I think that last part is correct from Zachary. Like, everyone was like, oh my God, great job, Broncos. You got yourself a star quarterback. And that didn't turn out to be the case.
I lean it's closer to Brady on the spectrum than last year's Wilson, which was one of the worst quarterbacks in the league, versus a stud that takes his team to the Super Bowl. I think it's closer to the Super Bowl part. And I don't claim to know Aaron Rodgers or get in his brain, but this is my take on it. I think he was disinterested, somewhat checked out last year. And this offseason, sure, he went in a dark cave, but his offseason regimen wasn't, let's do a bunch of mushrooms and screw around. He seems like he's more dedicated. And where I'm going with this is, maybe he's an odd dude. I'm sure he's an odd dude. And I can't wait for his football life and stuff like that to come out later in life. But I think when you poke that bear, he comes out with claws and teeth gnashing. And the last time he got poked was, we're going to draft Jordan Love in the first round. And everyone thinks that was so stupid. And maybe it was. But the next 2 years, they had an MVP quarterback. So if you told them, if you use this first round pick on Jordan Love, you get MVP quarterback play the next 2 years. Is it worth it? Yes. And now I think Rodgers has been poked and has been challenged and is still immensely, immensely talented. One thing I find interesting, though, is the market, the media, the expectations, the spotlight from the Big Apple versus Green Bay. I mean, is the starkest contrast in any sports league possible.
It would have to be early struggles, and then the whole situation just turns south. Media, and then Rodgers,
and he hates life,
and right, and so that's and look, actually, it kind of ties in. I wasn't going to go to this question, but James has a question about similar to how quarterbacks can be truck or trailer for an offense. How many owners actually create environments conducive to winning and winning culture, and how many hold their teams back? And so when I look at the Jets, they've been a team with bad culture and ownership, and they've
since
been
Joe Namath.
Since
right.
And like, so if I don't think any of us should sit here in 9 months and be shocked if the Jets aren't that good or disappoint, or if the Browns disappoint, or if the Detroit Lions disappoint, because that's what they do. And that's what they've done my whole life.
I know. And I'm sure the spotlight in New York makes it harder on the Jets than it is the Packers. And, not everyone operates under the exact same conditions, of course. And having the Patriots in your division that whole time was horrible for any team in that division, of course. But I do think ownership, culture, history is very, very important. And it's funny, we did the Steelers show today from OTAs. And the Steelers were the 8th seed in the AFC. The Lions were the 8th seed in the NFC. They were the two teams that just missed. And we were comparing them. And there wasn't a lot of differences. Both those teams were really good in the second half, and it seems like many national pundits are talking about the Lions as ready to emerge, but not the Steelers. And then I ended the conversation going, well, I'm nearly 50 years old, and one of these teams has won a ton of games, and the other team has won nothing. I mean, I can't get around that.
So you weren't alive for Super Bowl III.
No.
In your lifetime, the Lions have won one playoff game?
I think so.
And the Jets have
a few.
The Jets have had a couple blips, but they were very short-lived teams.
Rex Ryan
and no Super Bowl.
Right. Exactly. I mean,
and
they're not good organizations.
Steelers have a wing of their facility that's a museum to their titles, I assume.
Oh, yeah. You walk in, there's 6 trophies that just stare you in the face. And then you walk out the indoor, and there's their ring of honor that is like 50 yards long, Hall of Famers and near Hall of Famers. And your Niners aren't far behind. And the Patriots have built that. I mean, like, I look at the Patriots and think, boy, this roster is not very good. And Bill might be slipping, but they're going to be in it. They're not going to get first pick in the draft. I know that.
That said, just seeing what the team did last year with the Jets and how bad the quarterback play was, and they still were pretty good, seeing the talent on the team. And Aaron Rodgers has 2 of the last 3 MVPs. Aaron Rodgers is a better football player than Russell Wilson at his peak right now.
At any point in their career.
So I would be shocked if it goes that poorly. It would have to be some other circumstances other than he's just so bad. I mean, does he just all of a sudden fall off a cliff age-wise? He's going to turn 40 this season. So, it's not impossible, but it'd be hard to believe that he goes that far down the Russell Wilson situation last year in Denver.
I 100% agree. Yeah, I mean, again, I think it's closer to Brady first year in Tampa than it is Wilson first year in Denver.
Yeah, no doubt. Alex says, we'll finish up here. A little fantasy football question.
Oh, good.
Is what I'm feeling here. He doesn't really ask it in a fantasy football way, but would you rather have Davante Adams or Justin Jefferson for just this season? In other words, who do you think is the better player right at this moment? And I'm going to add the fantasy one. I think almost everyone would draft Justin Jefferson before Davante Adams, mostly just because of the quarterback situation. Correct?
I think the Vikings offense is going to be pretty darn good. Addison, Hawkinson, okay line. Cousins puts up numbers and feeds his guys very well for fantasy, whether it's Diggs, Thielen, whoever. He's great history of supplementing his receivers. I worry, as going back to the earlier conversation, I worry about Vegas top to bottom as a football team, although the offense is better than the defense.
Or could they be forced to throw from behind more?
Possibly.
Davante Adams is still Davante Adams, and he had a great year last year. And And that brings us to the question, like, is he still better than Justin Jefferson, or is Justin Jefferson completely passed him by, taking the fantasy stuff out of it?
Taking the fantasy stuff out of it, although Jefferson would be when I do my receiver ranks for fantasy, I can almost guarantee Jefferson will be one. The consistency in how he started his career is unmatched. But who's the better football player on June 1st? I think Jefferson's the best receiver in the league right now. I just don't see any flaws. I think he's unbelievably hard to cover at all levels. A really unique player.
A little bit more juice than Davante Adams. Davante Adams is so good and can get
so
open
good
against anybody. So that's a tough one, and it's not putting one guy down to put the other one over. And I'm not going to fight you if you think today, right now, Davante Adams is still a little better than Justin Jefferson, and there's probably some things he is better at than Justin Jefferson. Still.
Probably, yeah, he's great.
Projecting to this season, just age wise, one player could start to get a little worse. One player's still ascending in his career versus what his age is, and who knows what happens with injuries and all those things, but I think you got to go Justin Jefferson.
Yeah. I mean, when 2022 ended, the Super Bowl, congratulations, Chiefs. If someone asked me who's the best wide receiver on the planet right now, I would say Justin Jefferson. So not even projecting forward, just today, last I saw them, he's so angular and he's so weird with his movements with a high center of gravity, and he does it all slot outside. Now, it sounds like I don't like Adams, but Adams would be second, third. Right. Yeah. I mean, how much you like Jamar Chase, Tyreek Hill,
Adams has talked about this offseason, and it was a big year for Adams to show that it wasn't just Aaron Rodgers this whole time. Yeah. I think that was important to him and important to his career. Not that he was, saying anything about Rodgers, but you could close that argument and say, no, but it's not that Davante Adams needed Aaron Rodgers all that time. Davante Adams is awesome on his own. Like
maybe last year was the year that strengthened Davante Adams' Hall of Fame case more than anything else, or legacy.
Yeah.
They're great. I mean, it's a golden age of receivers, and they're two of the golden ones.
How about this? Speaking of where teams are picking in the draft, Davante Adams, dark horse, deadline trade.
Yeah. I mean, what if the Bills called and said, we'll give you a lot, or, whoever? Yes. I think that's very realistic. I mean, especially if the Raiders are in that first pick in the draft conversation, like we talked about to start the show.
That would be fun. That would be fun to see Davante Adams on a winning team if the Raiders do go in the tank as we have sort of projected here on today's show and past shows. And I know we're going to hear it from Raiders fans about that. We heard it from them last year, but Matt, we weren't wrong. And
the Jets. How about that? Rodgers is an MVP again, and we're going to put him opposite Wilson to the Jets, and boom, let's roll.
There you go. All right. Thanks everybody for your questions. Apologies to those questions we did not get to. We appreciate those every week. You can always drop them any old time on Twitter at BD Peacock, at Williamson NFL, or in the YouTube comments. Matt and I back tomorrow right here, Peacock and Williamson.